understanding which foods create inflammation and how to avoid them is key. So you might have tried it, and it didn't work because you were doing it wrong. I think one of the things that happens with a lot of women is that they kind of tend to undereat the important things. So for me, if I had to say, oh, like, what's the one thing that you would tell people to put more focus on, or maybe two things in a meal plan, it was to get.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Functional Nurse Practitioner podcast. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Karin Reiter. Karin is a functional medicine nutritionist. Karin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun. I love coming on shows and speaking to people.
Well, we love having you on the show today. And for the listeners or viewers, tell us a little bit about you. I know you're a functional medicine, which we love around here, nutritionist, but tell the listener and viewer a little bit more about you, what brought you into the functional medicine space, and just a little bit about your background.
Gosh, thank you. That's an interesting story. Where do we start? I didn't start off my life in the world of functional medicine or health wellness at all. I actually studied law and finance and worked in a bank. So I fell into this world because I got really sick in my late teens, early 20s. And my dad's a doctor, a conventional doctor. And I kind of was under the care of, the best doctors, all my dad's friends, for many years. But somewhere in my mid-20s, I hit what's called rock bottom with my health. I'm a real A-type personality. I'm really strong. I can push through things. I can plow through anything. And I managed to sustain normal living, but I wasn't really thriving. I was really struggling with a lot of chronic issues. I had my first autoimmune disease, which is Hashimoto's, which was totally mismanaged and not regulated.
Are you currently suffering with Hashimoto's? Have you been told there is nothing you can do? Are you tired of the never-ending fatigue? Are you ready to overcome the debilitating brain fog, anxiety, joint pain? I created a masterclass where we dive into the underlying root causes of Hashimoto's so we can get you on a different pathway. One that leads to not only improving your symptoms, but transforming your health. For now, I'm offering this masterclass for free because I know how it feels to keep searching for answers and coming up empty-handed. If you'd like to gain instant access to this masterclass, comment down below masterclass and I will send you the link. Now, back to today's episode.
And anyone that has an underactive thyroid knows that the symptoms are pretty brutal when you're not really functioning. I had a lot of skin issues. I had eye issues. I had fatigue, chronic fatigue. I just had a lot of stuff going on. I had Epstein-Barr virus for many years that, again, was not treated properly. And somewhere in my mid-20s, I remember having this epiphany, or what people call a life-changing moment, where I said to myself, something really needs to change. Like, you're 20 something, everyone's like going out having the best time of their life and you're not functioning. You keep getting sick. And that was a pivoting point in my life. Now, granted, this was a good 25 years ago. There was no Google like it is today. There were no podcasts. There was no, functional medicine. Who knew about functional medicine? There were naturopaths, there were traditional Chinese medicine people, there were doctors. That was pretty much the scope of what I was exposed to. And I remember, taking myself to the health food store where all the hippies and weird people went and asked for, something. I had an intuition that something with the food would help me. I was like, give me something, like a supplement. And then the naturopath there started speaking to me, and I eventually had a session with her, and that was life-changing for me because I realized very quickly that food had a lot to do with my symptoms. And when I changed my food, I started to feel better. And because I'm a in-depth person, I enrolled myself into nutrition school like in the evenings. I was working as a banker in the day, and in the evenings I studied naturopathy, or naturopathic medicine, as you guys call it in the States, which is a very holistic way of looking at health. Um, it's the Western medicine world. It's the Western world natural medicine. Um, and I studied that. I studied homeopathy. I studied herbs, and I started to apply all these things into my life. And lo and behold, I started to see a huge improvement in my symptoms. And when I graduated 4 years later, I said to my husband, I said, listen, I'm not going back to banking. I'm going to pursue this career. And, I ended up having 2 kids, and we ended up moving different countries, and there was a few international moves there. And I set up my business. And early in my 30s, I got sick with another autoimmune disease. And that was when I started to ask myself, okay, I did all the right things here. What went wrong? What's not right for me? And that's when I found functional medicine. And then I went and studied functional medicine, and I studied the nutritionist equivalent of the functional medicine degree. So they have a degree for doctors and nurses, but they also have a degree for nutritionists, which follows pretty much a lot of the stuff that the doctors and nurses, and the same protocols and the same school of thought. And what functional medicine says, which you know very well, is that there are root causes for your disease. Some of the root causes are physical, and some are mental, emotional. And you kind of have to address all these root causes if you want to get better. And so for me, there were a lot of root causes that I hadn't addressed other than the nutrition. Like I had mold exposure, I had heavy metals, my gut was like all over the place. I had trauma. There was a lot of stuff there that it took me a good 15 years to work on. And eventually it became my passion in my life. I love it. I'm very passionate about this. I'm passionate about sharing education with people on many spectrums of health about this model. And, of lately, I've been seeing some stuff on social media that it's kind of upsetting to me, because a lot of people are painting functional medicine as this like way of treating people that's very expensive, and that functional medicine practitioners push a lot of really expensive testing at you and really expensive supplements. And that's really stigmatizing functional medicine, because real functional medicine practitioners will really use a food first approach, will really drill into lifestyle measures that are for free. And yeah, we have some sophisticated tests, and yeah, we have some really cool supplements and gadgets and whatnot, but it's not a must. You can really help yourself feel better, whatever your budget is. You don't need to pour a whole lot of money into it. You just need education. So that's a nutshell.
Well, Karin, I love your story, and as all of us have a story. We
Yeah,
wouldn't go into functional medicine. I don't think we would, because we wouldn't even have heard about it or looked for it or tried to find another way unless we or someone we love
yeah,
were going through things that conventional medicine, frankly, just left us longing for more.
correct.
So I love that you shared that. And oh, I was making notes when you were talking, because there were so many things that you touched on that I really wanna dig into today. But one of the last things that you talked about, this it really fires me up, because you really, really hit the nail on the head about the stigma associated with functional medicine. I love that you pointed out it does not have to be expensive. Here's your bucket of supplements. Here's 100, hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars worth of testing, right? And not that that's not sometimes the pathway to go, but if we don't uncover the reasons why something is going on and look to the body, like you said, a food first approach, I feel like that's on my forehead. Like anybody that sees me, they want the answer. What's the supplement or a script? Like, what do I take? And I'm like, well, let's talk about what's going on inside of your body. So
Yeah,
I love that you brought that
yeah,
up.
yeah,
And you mentioned Hashimoto's. It is such a common autoimmune condition. I also was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I would love to have you speak a little bit more about the role of food with autoimmune diseases.
That's a brilliant question. And, this is, as we're speaking about Hashimoto's, I think Hashimoto's is one of the most prevalent, I think, autoimmune disease that we're seeing today. We know
Yes.
also statistics are telling us 1 in 4 women are going to get an autoimmune disease. So,
Mhm.
food has a lot to do with autoimmunity. And I will break it down probably into three main groups. Group number one, or reason number one, food matters, is because certain foods can create inflammation in your body, and certain foods can dampen inflammation. And inflammation is the setting stone for disease. Doesn't matter what disease, whether it's autoimmunity or cancer, or whatever it is. So, eating an anti inflammatory diet is very important, and understanding which foods create inflammation and how to avoid them is key. So, that's reason number one: food will affect your health. The second one is that there are certain foods that create an allergic response or an allergic like response in your body. So we call them food sensitivities. We're basically looking at various types of white blood cells and how they're reacting to food, and perhaps how they're affecting the gut lining. And that is a second reason that food would affect your autoimmunity, or your immunity in general, your immune system. So we know, for example, gluten. Gluten is a good example for this. There's a lot of things that does to the gut lining. It works on, like, it affects gut permeability, or leaky gut, as it's known, in simpler terms. We know that gluten, for a lot of people, the proteins in gluten, the immune system or the white blood cells react in an inflammatory manner towards these proteins. And that creates inflammation as well. And again, inflammation is kind of the perfect storm for developing an autoimmune disease. And I would say the third reason is that certain foods make or break your gut microbiome, the health of your gut microbiome. And we know that 70% of your immune system sits in your gut. So when your gut microbiome is unhealthy because of the type of food choices that you make, like, for example, if you eat a lot of sugar, or you drink a lot of alcohol, or you eat a lot of white bread and pasta and stuff like that, then your microbiome is going to look a certain way. It's going to behave a certain way. And it's going to behave totally differently if your diet is made of predominantly fruits and vegetables. And so those three things are very big topics, like your microbiome, your gut, the way your immune system is reacting, and your inflammation are big, big topics that all three of them are directly related to the type of food that you decide to eat in your diet.
Yes, the gut is the vitally important part of our body. Obviously, all of our body parts matter, but if we don't have a healthy gut, I don't believe we can have optimal
Yeah,
health. And we're likely to have some kind of an issue in a susceptible individual,
correct.
right? And why is autoimmune disease on the rise?
There's a lot of theories for that.
Right? There, there's
Again,
there's a
I
reason,
believe
and
that
and I
that sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
go ahead.
Okay. I didn't hear the end part of the question. I only heard the first part and I answered. So, um, there's a lot of reasons that autoimmunity is on the rise. I believe that it's a perfect storm between genetics and the environment. There is a genetics,
Yes.
there is something in the genes there, but the environment. So the environment is like what you eat, how you breathe, how you move, stuff that you're exposed to, toxins. These all will infect your environment. And so, and the
Yes.
gut for sure. And when we're speaking about the gut, it's such a large topic, right? The gut is a huge area in your body. It's your intestines and your stomach and the organs that are attached to it, and it's how do you digest your food? Your digestive enzymes. How's your motility? Are you managing to get the food down properly? How's your detoxification? Is your food being broken down properly? Are you absorbing the food properly? How's your microbiome? What have you accumulated in your gut throughout the years? Like, are you carrying around parasites? I'll tell you an example of myself. There's a specific parasite that you can pick up if you're doing proper, gut testing or stool testing. That is very much linked to Hashimoto's. It's called blastocystis, and many people that have blastocystis will. I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg, will have the parasite, or maybe the parasite is affecting the gut, which kind of leads to autoimmunity. Um, but one thing we know for sure, everybody that has autoimmunity has leaky gut, has gut permeability. And when we're working with people with
Mm-hmm.
autoimmunity, the first place that we start is the gut. And you know what was interesting for me when I went to my first lecture in functional medicine was like, oh, I know this stuff. This is from naturopathic school. Because in naturopathic school, my teachers always said, if in doubt, treat the gut. Like all disease begins in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
Hippocrates said that. Like there was
Yes.
stuff that was just
Yes.
drilled into us from a very early beginning, that the gut is essential. And as you say, like I tell my patients when they come in and they tell me, oh, my gut, I have a lot of issues with my gut. I'm like, you're lucky because that's bringing you to me. A lot of people don't have issues with their gut and they're sick. They don't know why. And it's hard for them to read their
Yes.
body's red flags, right?
That's actually I love that point that you brought up, and I was having a conversation this morning with someone about this very topic. That well, I don't have any gut issues. So if I don't have any gut issues, somebody newly diagnosed with Hashimoto's, if I don't have any gut issues, then I really don't have anything to be concerned with. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what about any other symptoms that you're having? Do you have joint pain? Do you have headaches? You have brain fog? How are you sleeping? Or maybe you don't have any symptoms at all, or you're not recognizing any symptoms, something is still brewing, right? It's like a smoldering under the surface. And the
Yeah.
best place, like you said, 100% agree with that check mark there. We need to start with the gut because it's involved with every part of our body.
Yeah.
And it's a line of entry point for so many things we're shoveling in because we're constantly shoveling things in. You also brought up it isn't just the way in which our body absorbs, digests, but it's what it does with it,
Yeah.
right? It's how we break it
Yeah.
down and biotransform how what we're doing with it and the role of food
Yeah.
with that aspect of our health.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't,
I'd love for you to
yeah.
speak a little bit more about that it isn't even just the nutrients, which of course matter, but what the body does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, you've got the food that we eat, which hopefully people are eating nutritious food, meaning it's got adequate nutrients. But remember that everything that you eat gets broken down and has a job. So, your protein that you're eating breaks down into amino acids, which make neurotransmitters, they make hormones, they make cells. The fruits and vegetables that you eat, they contain vitamins and minerals, they contain fiber. Each and every one of these things has a job. When you have issues with the gut and you're not breaking down your food properly, and it's not getting absorbed properly, it's not getting to the places that it needs to get. So, what we will frequently see with people is that they have what we call nutritional deficiencies, even though supposedly they're eating a good, rounded, balanced, what they call healthy diet. And these nutritional deficiencies, so you'll have like low levels of vitamin D. You might have low levels of iron, which is very common, by the way, with people with Hashimoto's. You might have low levels of B12 or folate or any of these. And when you have low levels, your body is functioning at a lower level. I mean, you just like if you don't have enough iron, you're not getting oxygen to the cells that you need to get them. So you're going to feel tired and brain foggy. You might even have headaches, right? The same goes for B12. Same goes for vitamin D. Your immune system is going to be compromised. So it's not just what we're eating. It's really what we're absorbing, and it's is it being well used in the body. And So this is the thing that I love about functional medicine is that you can really geek out. You can do a blood test and you can tell so much about how a person is functioning, and even just the way you read the tests, right? Because you read it as what's optimal, not what's normal. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, like, some people say to you, I don't have any symptoms. But I think it's more that we normalize feeling not great. Like, a lot of people walking
Yes.
around self medicating with coffee, sugar, antidepressants, God knows what else to function, and we normalize it. We're like, oh, everyone's tired and depressed and overweight and has back pain. Like, it's normal. And your doctor tells you that as well. Like, if you come to your doctor as a 40-year-old, 40 plus year old woman, you're going to say to your doctor, I'm not feeling great. He's like, oh, it's normal. It's part of your age.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that this is the thing. So, it's every case it needs to be a personalized approach. It really does, because every case is different. Some people really, the nutrition is the problem there. Some people really, the gut is the problem. Some people it's stress or a trauma that they haven't resolved. And so I feel like the best thing that can happen is when you sit with someone and you do a proper intake with a patient and go over their case. If you have a lot of experience and you have empathy, which a lot of functional medicine doctors do, because they came to this because of themselves or someone else in their family, you're going to get to that root cause very quickly. If not in the first session, and then in the second session or the third session, you're going to get there and you're going to address it. And this is the thing, right? It's about figuring it out together. And that's why I always tell my patients, I'm like, you are your body's best doctor. You know what is good for you and what is not good for you. You need to start to tune in to your intuition and your body. Because, yeah, we have standard stuff that we say is not great for you, or standard stuff that we say you should take. But a lot of the time, people know why they're sick or what's not right with them. They just need help figuring it out a little bit.
Absolutely. And not that there's any shade going to conventional medicine practitioners, there's no time, right? And it's not in the training
No.
to figure anything out. It's just strategizing with what's happening with symptoms, because ultimately, I think most practitioners want the people that they're working with to feel better. But from a functional medicine perspective, we're swimming upstream looking for the reasons why there are symptoms, diseases, issues in the first place. Like with you developing Hashimoto's
Yeah.
disease, you didn't just catch an autoimmune
Yeah.
disease, just like I didn't just catch it, or so many people I'm working with.
Yeah.
And I heard you say is that food is very important,
Yeah.
right?
Food is very
It's
important.
it's it's the information for our cells. So for the listener who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed, like I have no idea where to start, and I heard Karin say something about gluten, and feel like maybe they've heard that before, right? But for somebody who's really unsure of what it means to put food first, do you have any tips or strategies for just how
Yeah.
just an average person could navigate the seas
Yeah.
of health?
That's a great question. And I think I'm gonna answer, and I'm gonna say it's probably not as easy to be healthy as people want it to be. Like, you kind of have to make it a priority. You kind of have to say, my health is now a priority, and I'm gonna have to take more time to shop and to cook and to prepare this food, because it's very hard to eat healthy if you're on the go and food is not your priority. It just isn't. It's hard to find this food. It's getting better, but it's expensive as well if you want it on the go. So if you want to eat healthy, I would say one of your best bets is to start cooking at home, to control what you're eating. The more you cook at home, the more you can make sure that what you're eating is nutritious, that you're in charge of the ingredients, that you can make foods that are going to heal you. And it has a very powerful effect. Even when I teach people herbal remedies, when you brew something to help yourself, like a soup or a tea or something like that, you're already starting to signal to your body, don't worry, I'm going to help you. You're going to get better. This is very important. This initiation in your brain. So cooking at home is probably step number one, shopping and cooking, getting these ingredients. The way I try to explain it, I don't follow a specific diet protocol. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a paleo. I'm not a keto. I'm not a carnivore. I'm none of that because I really believe that some days you feel like eating more protein and some days you feel like eating, less protein. And that's okay. You don't need to kill yourself over any diet. And anyone that's really passionate about a certain diet doesn't really know how to work with people because people are very individualized and no diet really suits someone all the time for long periods of time. I mean, you could do a specific diet for a short period of time, but for a way of living, your diet needs to be flexible and it needs to have variety. And that's also the right way to look at it from a gut perspective if you want a healthy gut. That being said, here are a few guidelines. I would say avoid processed food. So your food should be as close as possible to its natural form. Like eat apples, not apple chips, not apple sauce. Just eat an apple. You want to have chicken, eat a chicken that looks like a chicken, not a chicken nugget, or a chicken, I don't know, processed chicken salami, whatever. Um, you know, Eat food that you buy and you prepare. So fresh fruits and vegetables, good quality protein, chicken, fish, eggs, meats. If you're a vegetarian, then go for your lentils and legumes. Don't skimp on them just because people tell you they're unhealthy. Soak them and cook them well. Herbs and spices. These are extremely important. Okay, so when you're eating this is called a whole foods diet. When you're eating these types of foods, they contain these anti-inflammatory natural chemicals that are going to help your body support inflammation. The second tip is um, in terms of foods to avoid, I would say there's probably a few that stand right at the top for me. Number one is seed oils. Seed oils are all these oils that are canola oil, vegetable oils, soybean oil, peanut oil, grapeseed oil, and so forth and so on. You usually find them in the supermarket in a plastic bottle and they're yellowish in color. These oils are pro-inflammatory, so they induce inflammation in the body, and these should be avoided like the plague. You should be only using oils that are cold pressed and extra virgin. So your olive oil, your coconut oil, even grass-fed butter, ghee, um, are much better alternatives, right? Um,
Yeah.
Processed food number two that I would recommend avoiding is artificial sweeteners. So anything that is diet or zero and has an artificial sweetener in it should be avoided. These actually really wreck the lining of the gut and can promote leaky gut. So be very careful of these like diet products and foods that have been artificially sweetened. The only artificial sweetener that I'm okay with is monk, MONK, monk fruit extract. But I'm not a huge fan of sweetening foods. But if you need something, then that would be the only one. But be careful of sucralose and aspartame and all those. Those are really, really bad. The next one I would say is probably gluten, especially for people that have Hashimoto's. There is a really close relationship between gluten and Hashimoto's. I would say 99% of my patients that have gone on a gluten-free diet have improved dramatically with their symptoms. The brain fog, the weight gain, the bloating, the fatigue, just the slowness of Hashimoto's, everything got better. So most people feel way better off gluten. Be careful of all the gluten-free products because a lot of them are just sugar traps. So there are some really good
Yes.
gluten-free products on the market that you can get that can, mimic a good quality pasta or some even good quality breads there are now on the market. But you kind of have to be very picky so that you're not just eating a sugary gluten-free product. But gluten would be a good one. The thing with gluten is it's tricky. You can't kind of do it halfish. You kind of have to go all or nothing type of a thing. You can't eat gluten free, 6 days out of the week, and then on Saturday go have pizza and pig out on pizza and bread, because every crumb of gluten creates like a good 3 months worth of inflammation in your gut. So if you are really serious about figuring out if gluten is hazardous to your health, you should go all in for at least 3 weeks. If after 3 weeks you don't feel that there's a big change, maybe it's not the gluten. But you really have to give it a try for 3 weeks. And I would say it's a big one to take off. Another one, which,
I
sorry,
I agree. I agree 100%.
yeah, a lot. I mean, most people feel much better without gluten. Another one, which
Yes.
is, I only tend to do it at the beginning of people's programs, is dairy as well. I'm not against dairy, and some dairy can be beneficial in people's diet. But when you're pretty inflamed and you're at the beginning and you're just really trying to feel better and more energetic and have a better gut, then it is a good idea to reduce the amount of dairy in your diet, specifically the conventional dairy, milk and regular yogurt and cheese, especially processed cheese. Later on, once you heal your gut, dairy is one of those things that some people can bring back in, especially if it's like goats or sheep or fermented dairy like kefir or something like that. People tend to tolerate that a little bit better. But in the beginning part, I tend to bring people off dairy because a lot of people, that protein in dairy is quite inflammatory for them. So, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah.
more, but I think that's a good start. Like, going to a more less processed diet, cooking at home, working on your fruits, vegetables, your proteins, going gluten free, going dairy free, avoiding seed oils and artificial sweeteners. I would also say reduce alcohol, which is probably not very popular, but alcohol is a pro-inflammatory toxin, and for a lot, you can't be drinking, 4 or 5 times a week and then feeling better. It's just not going to happen. You kind of really have to reduce alcohol. So I know it's not easy. I think the best thing is to find a tribe or someone to do it with, or a practitioner that you can work with, because if you're at the beginning of your journey, you're going to need some hand holding and someone to kind of push you through, because it's tough. I've done it. I did it. It's tough.
Yes, you're right. It's tough and it's confusing, and going to the store, if somebody is not familiar even with reading labels, it's very important to me to educate my patients and clients that I work with on even how to read a food label.
100.
And it's better, of course, to not need a food label and just buy the whole food. But one of the things I hear so often as a barrier is either the time, like somebody doesn't have time, they don't like meal prepping. And I love what you said for the first part. It was, I believe it was you said it was the first part of anything that has to be in alignment is the brain, right? We have to be thinking about why we're doing it, right? Um, I talk about having a solid why,
Yeah.
like a vision for what we
Yeah.
see for ourselves. It's really easy to fall off if we don't. Like I was one of those 95% gluten free, and I thought you know, I was doing something so great for my health, but I always wondered why I never really quite felt like much better and than having these autoimmune conditions, and until I really understood and what you said, that how instrumental, I believe you said it was like inflammation, food sensitivities, and our microbiome being intricately involved with the way in like how we feel. Obviously, it's
Yeah.
involved with our health and disease processes, autoimmune conditions, but also with the way in which we can absorb, digest. And so much of this is going to be, it's going to be really factored by what we feel, what we
Yeah.
think, and why we're doing
Yeah.
it, right? Like you had a solid why. You sought this out. I'm sure it wasn't one day
No.
I'm eating, well, I'm not speaking about myself now. One day I'm eating out of, the Fruit Loops box, and the next day I'm eating apples and, homemade granola
Yeah.
that's gluten-free. I didn't go from one to
No.
the other in one day. It took me a long
I told
time,
you, it took me 15
right? And
years. It took me a long time. And I have a lot of sympathy for people who are making this change. It's not easy. I'd love that, having
no.
solid white, sticking it on your fridge, like saying, I want to feel good. I just really want to
Yes.
feel good. Um, my tips is make it fun. Like, put a podcast on, put music on. I always speak on the phone. Like, I call girlfriends, or we just catch up, or I call my mom, and I just I use that time, that food prep time. It flies by for me, and it doesn't need to be. You don't need to cook gourmet meals. You really don't. Just chop up a few veggies, put a piece of fish in the oven. Like, it can be simple. It's like 15 minutes. Like, you don't need to go crazy. It's fine. And if you have kids, you teach them to cook, and you give them ownership of at least 1 or 2 nights a week. And that's even better. Like, you make them your little personal little slaves, which is what I do now.
That's a great tip right there. That's a great tip. And I actually have a few people that I'm working with that they have their kids handling like 1 or 2 days
Yeah.
a week when they're working later,
Yeah.
and they're really focused on, I want to feel better, right? So if I want to feel better, that's a great vision. Then I try to really, let's get more specific. Why? Why do you want to feel better? What do you feel?
Yeah.
And what steps are we going to take to
A
get
hundred
there?
percent.
Versus somebody told me food is important.
Yeah.
So I just need to eat. I need to
A
eat better.
hundred
You
percent.
go to the grocery store and literally you're standing there with the boxes like, is this good? Is this good? Like, I have no idea what any of this means,
Yeah.
right? And you brought up working with
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
That is so important because so many individuals, and really myself included, when I started my journey, it was frustrating.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, and I was a healthcare practitioner when really like the all bets were off and everything just really went awry for me, and I could barely walk,
Yeah.
and then just feeling so overwhelmed,
Yeah.
like, I had taken the gluten out, and then that can be frustrating also if we're making some changes, but we're not seeing the results that we want to
And
see.
that's when people fall off the
And you
wagon. That's
mentioned,
when people fall off the wagon.
yes,
And that's why I do think it's like exercise, though, right? If you're going to train for a marathon,
yeah,
you're going to use some guidelines. Like, you're going to use a trainer, you might join a group, you might use an app. Like, there's so many different ways to get help and knowledge, but it's important to, because, as you say, that point that you try something and it doesn't work for you, you fall off the wagon. And you might have tried it, but and it didn't work because you were doing it wrong, or you weren't doing it enough. Do you know what I mean?
oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, either doing it wrong, right, wrong, or there's other things going on with the body. So the body was not able to, you know, thrive
Yeah.
with what you were giving it at the time. It's like somebody, if somebody's let's say removes gluten, but dairy was really one of the bigger
Yeah.
triggers. Or let's say, the reason they remove both, but they're still having so many issues, but they're eating in the car, they're sitting down to eat, and they're, not paying attention. They're looking at their phone. They're super stressed out. I I see so often, and it's probably because I've lived it myself, that others gravitate to me because they know I understand where they're coming from, that stress can be a significant um, contributing factor to any issues with the gut, and the way in which food, the information that we get from our food, if we have a leaky gut like you said, and it's letting in undigested proteins, and gluten's getting in there, and then lipopolysaccharides might be getting in there, and then we're having an inflammatory response, or maybe we don't even know we are.
Yeah.
We just feel blah, or like more fatigue than
Yeah.
usual, or somebody just tells us we have a disease and we have no symptoms, that we really need to figure out, like, you or whoever I'm working with, like that individual person, and what's driving it for them.
Yeah.
And you said, and I feel like I've been saying this the whole conversation, but I love what you said about not subscribing to one perfect meal plan idea, and that it should be very tailored to that individual. And maybe it varies according to their needs. Like you even said, maybe I need a little bit more protein one day. Maybe I don't need as much that day. Maybe I really need to bulk up my vegetables and really focus on fiber that day. Um, how about for somebody that's thinking, I don't really know where to start, or how do you tailor a nutrition plan? And I know this is it's like, what kind of question is that? It's a loaded question because I know it depends. But what are some of the things maybe that you think about when you're tailoring your meal plans?
When I'm working with people, what are the things that I'm thinking about? I typically, again, if it's women or men, but I guess we're speaking about women here with Hashimoto's. I'm thinking about maximizing nutrients. I think one of the things that happens with a lot of women is that they kind of tend to undereat the important things. So for me, if I had to say, oh, like, what's the one thing that you would tell people to put more focus on, or maybe two things in a meal plan, it was to get enough protein. And I think that's where women are usually lacking. Um, they tend to not eat enough protein. There's just not enough of that happening. And protein is very important for women, and it's especially important for women who are trying to heal from an autoimmune disease. And it's important on many levels. It's satiating. It helps balance your blood sugar levels. It gives you all the amino acids that you need. So it's super important. So I guess the one thing that I would start off with is understanding what are the different protein sources that you can include in your diet. Like, do you eat animal protein? Okay, so then it's that there's a lot there. Then you can eat eggs and fish and chicken and meat, seafood. Um, are you a vegetarian? Okay, so that limits things. Maybe you're a both, and you can tolerate. Do you tolerate lentils? Okay, great. Then we can include them. Do you not tolerate lentils and legumes? They're not great for your body. Okay, so let's avoid them. Then that would be the one thing I would press forward to people, is like, especially women, is make sure that there's protein 3 times a day in your diet, because that's going to help you stay on track with this type of eating, this healthy eating. Because I think your worst enemy here of eating healthy is being hungry. When you're hungry, if you're out, you're going to buy something that is there and it's probably not going to be healthy. And if you're at home and there's unhealthy food, you're going to snack on that unhealthy food. So not being hungry and having good stable blood sugar levels, you're going to stay on track and you're going to make better choices in the next meal. So I would say protein is the first one, and making vegetables exciting. So a lot of people are not excited about eating vegetables. They're like, oh, it's so bland, I don't want to eat it. But there's lots of amazing recipes today. Pinterest is like a wealth of information. You can get so many different dressings and salads and stir fries and soups, and so many cool ideas for using veggies that you can really make it exciting. You know what I mean?
Karen, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I don't
Are you
know if
back?
it froze on your
Yeah.
side. Did it freeze on my side?
It froze up. I we last I heard, because then we went blank, was veggies don't have to be boring.
Okay.
You can really jazz it up. There's so many things that we get.
Okay, so
Okay.
I was saying, veggies can be super exciting. Pinterest is a wealth of information. You can Google so many cool soups and salads and stir fries. And, I would say I usually tell people to look for paleo style recipes. They kind of tend to hit a lot of tick a lot of the boxes for me in terms of the types of oils and the sugar and stuff like that. So if you Google paleo vegetables on Instagram or on Pinterest, you'll find so many cool recipes. So it's maximizing the vegetables and maximizing the proteins that I think is extremely important in a meal plan, specifically for women with Hashimoto's.
I agree. And I was somebody who didn't eat any vegetables hardly. I mean, unless you just count corn, like canned, like niblets. I grew up eating. I didn't really know what a vegetable was until, I'm sorry, Nanny. My grandmother raised me. I just ate pasta every day, pasta and bread. And and just mostly that, and cereal and sweet tarts and all the good stuff. Um, so when I finally learned about this world of vegetables, I wasn't very impressed.
Yeah.
And when I think about, because I didn't know how good they can actually be and that our taste buds change,
Well, that's an
right?
important
Like if we're
point.
eating this hyper palatable
Yeah.
food that's really salty, really
Yes.
sweet, it's going to be hard for anything to taste good after that. But like if we, again, we have a solid why, and we are committed, like we want the change, we have to
Yeah.
want it. If we don't want it, we're not, it's not going to happen. That this is this and this, I say, are have to be
Yeah.
involved, really involved, for any true change to happen. Because when I think about what I eat today, and I was actually showing two of my patients, different patients yesterday, I take photos of all my food, not every single meal, but most meals, even when I go out. And I do that because then I'm showing, like, this is what I might order this when I go out. Or if I choose an option that maybe wouldn't be on, Tara's approved list because I am human, so that everybody knows I don't believe in perfection
Me
because
either.
nobody's going to achieve that, right? But when I look at the things that are on my plate now, I wouldn't have even known what it was. Like, I didn't even know what it was. And I would have said, oh, I don't want any sauerkraut. That sounds disgusting. Or what's a radish? Or, like all of these things, and talking about variety and color,
Yeah.
and that it can be really exciting because I love what I
Yeah.
eat. I love it. Like, it tastes really good, and I look at it like it's healing to my
Mm.
body. How about if you had somebody come to you that said, Karen, I'm so busy. I have so many time constraints. I feel like I'm not going to be able to follow the plan for any nutritious food. So I don't know where to start. You mentioned the paleo, like looking for paleo. Anything else you might tell that individual that challenges you, that they just don't have
Mm.
time to do any kind of meal prepping?
Smoothies is a great one because smoothies are like bam, bam, bam. You have a really nutritious meal. If you've got a good quality protein powder, a non-sugary, nut milk, some berries, maybe a veg, maybe some bee pollen. Throw in some chia seeds,
Ooh.
whatever. You've got a really nutritious meal there. And that's like you smack bam, you've got dinner or lunch or breakfast off, so you can do that. That's a really good one. My second one is sardines or salmon, tin sardines or tin salmon. I'm not a huge fan of tins, but those two are very nutritious. And if you can mix those with, some avocado and put it on, say, some sort of gluten-free paleo style bread, you've got a meal. That's like a 5-minute meal. So if you've got like two meals out of the day and you learn, as you say, to make good choices in a restaurant or in a takeaway place, like how do I choose healthy when I'm going out, and I can give recommendations, then it becomes a little bit easier. So this is what I say when we work with someone who, in a personalized manner. So if you've got someone who's working and just doesn't have time to cook, if that person can make a smoothie in their house in the morning, even if it's a takeaway smoothie, take it with them to work. If we teach that person how to choose healthy, choices at lunch, at the salad bar or at the deli, and you can make healthy choices. Of course, it's better and cheaper to eat homemade food, but you can still make healthy choices out. And then if you could teach that person one or two really simple put together dinners, and they could improve their nutrition by, like, say, 60 to 70%. As we say, it's progress, not perfection. Like, that's how we start. We need to start somewhere, but it's about starting. And I tell people, like, start. What looks difficult for you now in a month will be very easy.
I I love that. What looks difficult will be
Yeah.
easy, because I think so often we're focused on the end result and it seems so far
Yeah.
away. Like the individual, I'll use myself for example, eating a bag of Doritos, thinking about eating vegetables. I can't see that person. It doesn't, I don't understand how I'm going to become that person that enjoys it. But once we make little changes lead to bigger changes. And then now looking back, I'm not sure why I thought it was going to be difficult because now it
Yeah.
isn't.
But it took you
Now
time
it's
to,
part
to practice it and to put
a
it
lot of
in
time.
place. And so for me, I think, you were saying about not eating vegetables. I wasn't eating protein. I didn't like protein. I didn't eat it. But I look back, choices that I used to make when I used to go on holiday, when I used to go to the buffet, and choices that I make now. And it's so easy for me. I just walk into the buffet and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what I'm going to have. And I don't eat, but it was really hard when I started. I was like, oh my God, how would I not eat the croissants and the cakes and the cookies and whatnot? And it took time. And I think that's the thing. People want instant results. There's nothing instant. There's progress, and the more you practice this type of living, the more you want to do it. And even when you do fall off the wagon, you crave going back to what you ate, and that's a lot of my clients go on, on holidays, and they say, what should we do? And I'm like, just go on holiday and enjoy yourself. Because I know that when I go on holiday, after 3 days of indulging, I'm like, oh, I crave something healthy. I crave like a good salad, and when I come home, I'm like, oh, so good to have like home food again and to be able to cook and eat, myself food. Because after a while of indulging, you miss feeling the way you felt, on your routine.
That's such a great point that you mentioned about if you go on holiday. I was literally talking to my sister this morning, and she's getting ready to go to France here relatively soon, saying, "Well, what about when I go there?" And I'm like, "Well, just enjoy yourself."
Yeah,
Like, if I go to France, I'm going to enjoy myself, and it is. I don't believe it's a all or nothing. If we're all in or all out, we're likely going to be all out
100%.
because we're not perfect.
100%.
We're not perfect individuals. And if I fall off the wagon, as you say, which doesn't happen like it used to happen, but occasionally, I have non negotiables. So for me, definitely gluten's a non negotiable. As a person with several autoimmune conditions, Hashimoto is one of them. It's just for me, I don't want it. I don't need it. I'm good without it. But if it's something else that I'm like, I don't normally eat this, but then I have it, like you said, you crave the healthy foods. Like the next day, I'm like, all I want is that colorful
Yeah.
plate. And I love to arrange my food so it's like Instagram worthy. And I send it to my patients, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, you can't expect me to do that." I'm like, "Can we have a
Yeah.
challenge? Can we try it?" Right? It doesn't have to be, necessarily photo like this
Yeah.
beautiful picture, but let's see what you come up with because we eat with our eyes, right? And then trying to arrange things. I like to do it by color. I like to see like this is how much of this I'm eating. Like if this is like my shrimp, it's over here.
Yeah.
And when I talk about constructing a plate, because it can be really difficult to know like what do I put on this plate, because for me it used to just be a giant plate of pasta, and it was just white pasta with no real nutrients in it and just filled with gluten. That was my meal, never thinking about putting anything else on there versus like plate
Yeah.
construction, right? So as a nutritionist, this is your
Yeah.
specialty is is food, and working with all of your clients to teach them because it's a skill,
It
isn't
is,
it?
but it is pretty simple. And I think what happened with me and you and our generation was that nobody taught us. Nobody told us. Like I teach my
No.
kids that all the time. I'm like, they'll see me and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, mom, look, check out my protein," or, that they're excited about it because they know already. They know. I taught them from a very young age. These are the nutrients you need to make a meal full. And I went to their school and taught it to the kids in the school. And I think there's a lot more information today. Like I have teenagers, and my daughter is exposed to TikTok, and um, she picks up all these crazy things that I am like, oh wow, there's some good stuff there as well, not just bad stuff on TikTok. But this is the thing. Nobody taught us. We didn't learn this. Everybody
No.
said to us it doesn't matter. And there are still doctors, and again, I'm not against conventional medicine whatsoever. Although I am yet to find an endocrinologist that works with women with Hashimoto's that has an approach that is similar to functional medicine. I've yet to find one, and believe me, I've spoken to many, many, many. They are just not on
Same.
that page. But I've yet to find a conventional doctor that it's up and coming now. It's up and coming. But most conventional doctors are going to tell you food has nothing to do with your health. I work with oncologists, I work with gynecologists, I work with so many different doctors, and they are all like, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. And I'm like, yeah, it does matter. It matters a lot. And you know what? The proof is in the pudding because
That's
people are aware of this, and me and you are busy. We have buzzing practices. People want to know
yes.
these things because they know it matters. And slowly, slowly, you're seeing the
When I
young doctors starting to study functional medicine and doing courses, and they're like, "Oh, we need to get our game up because people are demanding this. People are coming to their clinics and showing them trials and researches and supplements, and they're like, we don't know about this, and they need to know about it. So it's going to happen. It needs to happen from both ways. It definitely needs to be a radical shift, and in general in the world, but specifically each and every one of us within ourselves needs to be the best version that we can. And part of that is respecting yourself well enough to eat well and to make food a your priority. But I think what I'm taking away from you today, what I really loved is this why. Like, what is your why? And being so clear about it, because I think that is going to help people navigate to where they want to getting.
and when you talked about other like doctors not ever talking about food, I was the nurse practitioner in women's health putting cruciferous vegetables in my treatment plan.
Yeah.
And then people saying, "Are you like people are in the office? Why are you putting this in there?" I'm because it matters. Because food matters, and I do think that I can feel somewhat of a shift, at least in the area where I live. I actually have a lot of conventional medicine practitioners refer people to me. In particular, I've had several refer patients with Hashimoto's to me, and they've gotten markedly better with because again, I'm always going to go food first, but sometimes alongside I am doing other things, or I might do expanded testing, or I might do supplements. It really depends on that individual, and ultimately whoever I'm working with, they're in
Yeah.
charge. Right, and they don't feel like they are. At least that's what they tell me, and that's how I always felt, that I had no say in my own health, in where I like what was going to happen to me. Like, Tara, you're just flying down an autoimmune highway, and in a few years you'll be tethered to a dialysis unit or you won't
Yeah.
walk. It's like, well, that's all you got for
Mm.
me. And I do think that there is a shift with that. It's not enough of a shift, and it is going to take time.
Yeah.
But what for the listener out there who might be thinking, well, what am I supposed to do if you're a patient or an individual that has an issue or condition, or somebody told you, gave you a diagnosis, and it's nobody's talking about food? This is something that we can get proactive with. Like you said,
Yeah.
Karin, as a patient or an individual, right? Just a person, we could seek out individuals just like Karin or myself to work with. We can also go to our conventional medicine practitioner asking questions
Yeah.
like, I want to talk about food. And if they're not receptive, we can ask, who can I
Yeah.
talk to about this then?
100%.
Because yeah, we need that. I'm very big on empowerment, and that it isn't, because otherwise the road can be bleak. I don't know. I don't, obviously, I don't know exactly what your journey was like, but for me, you mentioned like endocrinologists, yet to find one. Same. That I just felt so powerless and hopeless and terrified for what's going to happen to me. And that's how I found functional
Mm.
medicine. Fast forward to today, obviously changed my life, changed everything about the way that I practice, and obviously it changed your life and changed your mission in life, which is subsequently changed everything for anyone that comes in contact with you,
Yeah.
whether it's clients or your
Yeah.
family. And unfortunately for my kids, they're a lot older than yours. I didn't know a lot of the things I know now when they were young. Now it's pretty much all I talk about. They're like, okay, I get it, I get it. But I I I don't believe in blaming ourselves for what we don't know. So I can't change the fact that I didn't expose my kids
Yeah.
to variety or anything like what I would be exposing them to now. But with change, since we can't change the past, we can implement things into our life now and still have that that what is the word I'm looking for? That message that we can transmit to the
Yeah.
world, right? Whether it's for me now, I have grandchildren, so
Wow.
they
That's
know
exciting. You don't
they
even
know
look
that
like you have grandchildren. You're doing something right with your
they're very
nutrition.
sweet. It's the lack of gluten. Take note. No, I'm kind of kidding, kind of not kidding. But my 8-year-old grandson Kelso's,
Wow.
he's like, Nana, we don't need gluten. Gluten's bad,
So
and,
cute.
and we don't need all of that sugar. Where's the monk fruit, Nana?
So cute.
and he went from eating more of the
Diet.
conventional
Yeah.
food, like the standard American food, like somewhere else with me loving the different treats and donuts. And yeah, I don't eat a lot of donuts normally because I prefer very nutrient dense foods with lots of vegetables and vitamins, nutrients. But if I'm making donuts, they're high in protein, they're very low in sugar, they don't have gluten, and they taste really good for when we have that craving, so as we don't run into a bakery and grab one of those croissants
Yeah.
like you
Exactly.
like you mentioned. This has been such a fabulous conversation. What haven't we covered? Any key points, clinical pearls that you feel the listeners could really benefit
I
from?
mean, we covered a lot in the sense that we spoke about root causes of Hashimoto's. We spoke about um, not only nutrition but stress as well, which I think you spoke about, which I thought was very very important. And I guess for me personally, stress is the hardest one to work on, and I think for a lot of people. Um, I think if I want people to take away one thing from this is that there's always a way to heal yourself. Never, ever, ever lose hope. You can always help yourself feel better in many simple ways. You don't need to spend a lot of money on it, but you need to be solid in your heart and in your head. Have that why so that you have that motivation. And you're not alone. There's plenty of support out there for you. You just need to want to seek it and you'll find it. Um, and I think that that's where I want to leave people with hope to know that there is always a better choice.
Well, you and I are definitely aligned, Karen, because that is the I'm gonna put something up on the screen here like hope or you're never hopeless, something, an inspirational quote or something I'm gonna put on the screen, and definitely as a takeaway, uh, emphasize everything that Karen just said, that we're never hopeless, that even if you feel that way, even if you've been told that there's nothing that you can do, there's always healing that the body can find. We might need to find somebody to help us
Yes,
in order to achieve and attain that. And
exactly.
on that note, Karen, how can the listeners learn more about you and your amazing practice?
So like we found each other on Instagram, which is probably my favorite way. I have a love hate relationship with it because it's great, but also sometimes very time consuming. But I'm on Instagram. I'm sure you'll tag me. My Instagram is Karin Goji. I have a website which is called nutritiousanddelicious.com. And I love to share, data and recipes and information, for free. So even if you can't work with me one on one, or you can't join any of my master classes or my online work, you can always just follow me for advice and free information. And I'm happy to interact always. I love speaking to people.
Well, everybody go follow Karen. Her Instagram's amazing. Her website, I looked at it. It's wonderful. I'm going to link everything in the
Thank you.
show notes, and definitely go check out those recipes, those incredible recipes that she's talking about. because food can be fun and definitely delicious. It could be nutritious
Delicious.
and delicious.
And Taryn, thanks to
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thanks to you for being a pioneer and sharing information and taking from your time and effort to share information with people. You know, it shouldn't be ignored. It's beautiful work that you're doing, spreading knowledge. And I applaud you. I'm sure everybody else that is exposed to your work does as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on today. And we might have to have you come back on. I'm sure everybody's going to just love hearing from you and going to your Instagram and your website. And thank you once
Thank
again,
you so
Karin.
much. Have a great day.